Tonight, the president delivers the State of the Union amid the Senate impeachment trial to remove him from office.
So tomorrow, the Senate must do what we were created to do.
The big vote over abuse of power and obstruction of Congress.
Can one abuse the public trust by behaving exactly as expected?
Plus,
so listen, it is too close to call.
You won!
The long-awaited first results from the messy Iowa caucuses start to trickle in.
And the death toll rises.
We are at the phase where it's an epidemic.
As the global outbreak of the coronavirus makes its mark.
All this ahead of our CBN News team's special live coverage of the president's national address. Tonight on Faith Nation.
From the Iowa caucuses to tonight's joint session of Congress, it's the political version of the Super Bowl here in Washington. Welcome to Faith Nation. I'm John Jessup.
And I'm Jenna Browder. The end of the president's impeachment trial finally in sight as the Senate prepares for tomorrow's vote.
But before that key vote to decide his fate, President Trump delivers the State of the Union. With us to preview tonight's address is CBN News chief political analyst David Brody. And as the impeachment trial continues in the Senate, CBN White House correspondent Ben Kennedy joins us from Statuary Hall to give us the lay of the land on Capitol Hill. Ben?
Well, John, Jenna, the theme is the great American comeback. Trump plans to tout the economy, jobs, and trade deals. It is unclear if he will talk about impeachment, as his third State of the Union address is just one day before the Senate votes on 2 articles of impeachment. Now, no Republican senators have indicated they will vote to convict Trump, so odds are it'll be down to party lines, which means President Trump will be acquitted. During Monday's closing arguments, both President Trump's defense team and House managers focused on history and how they feel this impeachment will be remembered.
But presidential impeachment was not designed to remove an amoral leader that the nation had knowingly and willingly elected. It was designed to rescue the nation from a leader who abuses the public trust. Can one abuse the public trust by behaving exactly as expected? The Senate impeachment process answered my question. In 1974, senators of both parties were willing to condemn extreme presidential misconduct.
Tomorrow, the Senate must do what we were created to do. We've done our duty. We've considered all the arguments. We've studied the, quote, mountain of evidence, end quote. And tomorrow, we will vote. We must vote to reject the House abuse of power. Vote to protect our institutions. Vote to reject new precedents that would reduce the framers' design to rubble.
Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell slammed House Democrats' drive to impeach, calling it the most rushed, least fair in history, and said he will vote tomorrow to acquit. The Kentucky Republican did not address whether Trump's actions were inappropriate or even wrong, as some of his colleagues have conceded. John, Jenna?
Ben Kennedy on Capitol Hill. Thanks, Ben. CBN's chief political analyst, David Brody. David, you were at the White House today for an anchor luncheon ahead of the State of the Union. What can you tell us about that? What did the president say?
Right, so it was off the record, so nothing. Back to you. No, no, I can say.
Didn't he call it a low-key speech, though? I mean, you don't think of low-key typically when you think of State of the Union.
That's right. He did call, and that was one of the things we could say on the record, that it's going to be a low-key speech. But get ready, because the next day, when he's acquitted, he may have a few more things to say about impeachment. And I think that's where it might not be so low-key.
Speaking of acquittal, David, this appears to be a pretty big week for the president. He has the State of the Union tonight, the vote on perhaps acquitting him tomorrow. Talk about how this might be a pretty memorable week for President Trump.
Yeah, let's remember Iowa, right? I mean, he won the Republican caucus, and in a way, he won the Democratic caucus because of the snafu that they had. Obviously, Buttigieg and Sanders will win that. But yeah, I mean, so that was good for him. The State of the Union, remember, with the the State of the Union, what we're expecting tonight is him to be teleprompter Trump tonight. We expect 95% for him to pretty much stay on prompter.
Stay in the lane.
That's right, 5% unsuccessful rate here if he goes off script for sure. And so he's going to get good reviews and he'll come across as presidential, and hopefully the White House is hoping he doesn't step on himself the next day on Twitter. And then, of course, you've got the acquittal on Wednesday where he could win every single Republican vote.
How do you see some of these Democrats voting? You know, Doug Jones, maybe Manchin in West Virginia, some of these Democrats who could go either way.
Well, Doug Jones is an interesting one because he's up for re-election, and so he's got to weigh, you know, in essence, does he try to satisfy the Democrat base that got him there, or does he try to kind of go with what Alabama's kind of known for, which is Republican politics? And so that's a tough one for him. I would expect potentially a split vote with him, yes on one article and no on another, kind of split the difference because of the 2 articles of impeachment. And then Joe Manchin, of course, went for the censure resolution, which only can be brought up if Mitch McConnell, because he's not going to bring it up.
Describe that, David. It's kind of a slap on the wrist, really, more than anything, right? The censure.
Yeah, pretty much. And it's Joe Manchin's way of kind of threading the needle or splitting the difference, if you will. And, you know, I'm not quite sure if that really helps Joe Manchin politically, but then again, he's not up for re-election, so
Does
it's
that
all right.
eliminate how he perhaps might vote tomorrow?
Possibly, though it's interesting because Susan Collins is going to vote no on impeachment, and Lisa Murkowski also is going to vote no. So, you know, we've been starting to see a little bit of the tea leaves here as to what some of these Republicans are going to do. Mitt Romney will be very interesting.
Is he still up in the air?
Yeah, so far he hasn't officially announced one way or the other. I can't imagine Romney is actually going to vote for impeachment of this president. I don't think it necessarily gets, and here's why. Because even though he voted for witnesses, since there were no witnesses, then he's got to deal with what's in front of him. And what's in front of him was never something that I think he felt totally, or he's feeling totally comfortable with, that's impeachment. He wanted to hear more from witnesses, which he never got.
All right, David, stick around. We'll get back with you in a little bit.
Sounds good. Thanks,
David. Well, caucus chaos in Iowa with inconsistent and inaccurate counts delaying the results.
Democratic Party leaders blame it on technology and are still counting the votes by hand. Senior Washington correspondent Paul Strand is watching the preliminary results come in and joins us with the latest. Paul?
Well, Jenna, we thought we were going to be able to present, finally, the results of last night's Iowa caucuses. But after almost 24 hours to figure out the numbers, the Democrats have them from just 62% of the precincts. Still, though incomplete, the numbers are staggering. South Bend, Indiana Mayor Pete Buttigieg is in the lead with 26.9%. That's ahead of the senators in second and third place, Bernie Sanders with 25.1% and Elizabeth Warren with 18.3%. But this may be the biggest headline. Supposed national frontrunner Joe Biden is coming in a distant fourth with just 15.6%. That could seriously affect the former vice president's momentum in coming days. Now, the Iowa Democrats are blaming computer problems for this big-time screw-up and getting out the results. But at least the top Democrat official in the state is apologizing.
With uncertainty in the air as candidates addressed their supporters Monday night, each took advantage of the situation to celebrate like they were the winner.
By all indications, we are going on to New Hampshire victorious.
Sanders supporters are hopeful this is finally his year.
I feel like Bernie is really going to be that answer that we need. I think he's the only one viable that can go against Trump right now.
While Warren caucus goers also had some pep in their step.
I'm so excited. I'm so thrilled.
Biden didn't quite make it as a viable candidate at every precinct.
I think that overall Biden does have the support we need. A lot of candidates just have confidence that he's still going to do well, and so some Iowans aren't showing up for him, but I think ultimately he will do well.
But his supporters tried their best to secure more votes.
I'm getting text messages to come over to Bernie as we speak.
While many Democrat voters tell CBN News it's time for some new leaders.
I feel that it's time for maybe getting some younger people with some different ideas.
The majority stands ready to support whoever wins the nomination.
I will be behind whoever the candidate will be.
But no matter whom that is, Donald Trump Jr. tells CBN News none of the candidates are a match for his dad.
The reality, if I look at what I believe to be the two front runners right now, whether it's Joe Biden or Bernie Sanders, I'm like, well, one's a communist, that's great, I can work with that. The other, honestly, like, can't remember what state he's in 50% of the time.
Since 2000, each Democratic candidate who's won the Iowa caucus has gone on to win the party's nomination. Given the unusually crowded primary field, many campaigns are hopeful that 2020 marks an end of that streak. Reporting from Iowa, Abigail Robertson, CBN News.
Well, excuse us, folks, that was Abby doing her report from Iowa. What that Iowa Democratic Party chairman said was the reporting of the results, circumstances surrounding the 2020 Iowa Democratic Party caucuses were unacceptable. As chair of the party, I apologize for this. Back to you guys.
Thank you very much. Well, coming up, our Faith Nation political panel, David Brody and Jennifer Wishon are on deck.
I am Region's first ROTC graduate student.
Meet the pastors who are preaching the gospel in a fresh, fearless way. I'm Roberto Torres-Cedillo. Join me each week for Next Gen Voices. And watch God transform a generation.
How'd you like to get a redo on your health, on your body, on your arteries, so you could have the energy you had 20 years ago? The great news is you can. I'm Dr. Mike Roizen, chair of the Wellness Institute at the Cleveland Clinic. I've written 4 New York Times bestsellers. But even better than having to read all that, you can listen to this DVD and watch it. Protect your heart? Yes, you can. Here's how.
Go to CBN.com or call 1-800-700-7000 for your free copy of Protect Your Heart. Let the medical experts show you their new discoveries on how to avoid heart disease and even reverse it. Easy steps to uncover the hidden dangers in your medicine cabinet, reduce stress, and get a complete do-over for your health. Call 1-800-700-7000. That's 1-800-700-7000. Or go to CBN.com to claim your free copy of Protect Your Heart.
Welcome back. The President's State of the Union now less than 3 hours away, and tonight we are expecting him to touch on religious freedom. He, of course, has many people of faith around him, including his faith advisor, Paula White. In an interview with CBN News, she described the President as someone who a lot of us don't get to see.
And I was always amazed because he would stop and look at the hot dog vendor, and I would just kind of keep bypassing, call him by his first name, ask him how his wife was doing, how his kids were, know everything about his story. And I thought, my goodness. Or if I'd go on the golf course with him a few different times, he was showing me some new buildings that they were building, and he goes out of his way to go over to a sand trap. And this guy is raking the sand trap for him on his golf courses. This is early 2000s. And he stops and gets out of the car and walks over and just shakes his hand and says, "Thank you so much for taking care of my course." And I'm thinking, no wonder this is who he is. And this is one of the most compassionate people. This is a person that, if he shakes your hand, it's his word. So I mean, I can tell these stories all day. Again, I took a person up. Her name was Deborah. And she was a friend, and I had friends long before the presidency that just wanted to meet then Mr. Trump, successful apprentice, businessman. And so they said, "We'd love to meet him." And I called up Rona and I said, "Hey, I've got some friends in town." And one of them was a sister of a very high-profile minister. So we go in, and he meets her, and of course he knows her brother, and saying, "I really love his ministry and love what he's doing," etc. And he looks over to Deborah. He goes, "Now, what do you do?" And she said, "Well, I have a ministry to the prostitutes." She said, she really does a lot of rehabilitation, goes out on the streets and helps these girls get a better life. And so as she's telling her story, he stops in the room and goes, Rona, Rona, give me my checkbook. And he's just right there. I mean, writes a check for $10,000. And it wasn't the only check. He goes, now that's real ministry. And just always, I mean, I could tell so many stories that he would never tell about himself.
Now we want to bring in our Faith Nation political panel. Joining us tonight, senior Washington correspondent Jennifer Wishon and CBN News chief political analyst David Brody. David, to you first. You also know the president pretty well. What do you make of Paula White's comments?
I think she's right on. I mean, he has a softer side. What's interesting is that he never wants to show that softer side in public. You know, we always hear, you know, Bill Clinton and other politicians are always wanting, well, it's not just Bill Clinton, but they all want to like kiss babies and show how, how emotional and attached they are to the voters. Trump couldn't give a rip. You know, he wants to be the law and order guy, but in private, as Paula was describing, he's a much different person. I remember the first interview he told me, he said, with Ivanka and all the kids, he said, I have 4 rules: no drugs, no smoking, no tattoos, and no drugs, or no alcohol, excuse me. And, he's a pretty dedicated father behind the scenes, but he doesn't want anybody to really know any of that.
Jennifer, back to the joint address before Congress. Let's discuss the elephant in the room. President Trump gives the State of the Union tonight in the very chamber where Democrat House lawmakers voted to impeach him just a little under 2 months ago. Awkward moments?
A little awkward tonight, but there's precedent for this, John. Back in 1999, Bill Clinton actually delivered a State of the Union address just as his Senate trial was getting kicked off. And, just as in 1999, when President Trump takes the rostrum tonight, he will be fulfilling a constitutional duty. And I think we're going to see members of both parties applaud for that. Because I think there is a sense of reverence to the Constitution inside of that chamber. This is a very special night for America, but it is going to be awkward. However, I think it's going to be less awkward for the president than it is for Adam Schiff and the House managers, Chuck Schumer and his allies, the Democrats in the Senate, because they're going to have to sit there while the president in prime time gets to appear presidential. He always rises to the occasion on these big speeches. And so they get to watch this man rise to the occasion, who they're saying have been making the case that he should get kicked out of office. So it's going to be a little awkward for them, I think, tonight.
Well, you kind of touched on it, Jennifer, but this is an opportunity for the president to lay out his record and also look forward to the year ahead. What do you anticipate being some of the themes tonight?
Yeah. Well, this is kind of the kickoff to his reelection. And so he's going to be looking over the last 3 years of his presidency. He's going to be talking a lot about the economy. This is huge for him. He talks about it all the time. He's going to be talking about immigration. This is something that his base really cares about. This is something that he railed about in his first campaign. He made a lot of promises. He's going to try to show where he's been trying to meet those promises. We're going to hear him talk about the trade deals, some of the national security developments that we've seen over the past few months. But I think overall, the president is trying to keep this very optimistic tonight. So we'll look for that.
Yeah. David, he's also been a president who's really taken head on the culture wars. Do you think we'll see him touch on that tonight?
I think briefly. I don't think it's going to be a major dominant theme. My understanding is this speech is going to run about 1 hour and 25 minutes, and then you have to put in the applause. So, we're looking at about hour and a half, hour 40 minutes. No, I don't think so. I do think one thing to watch for, this education issue, school choice, is going to be in the speech tonight. That's going to be interesting. He's trying to appeal to the African-American community. He's done, as the White House would say, he's done a lot for the African-American community. School choice is one of those issues that I think they believe they can capitalize on and get more voters to the polls in 2020. So we'll see.
David, the timing of this is a little bit serendipitous for the president. This comes as new poll numbers show the president hits an all-time record approval rating. He couldn't ask for better as far as timing.
Yeah, I think there's a view inside the White House that impeachment clearly has helped not just this president, but the Republican Party, because in that same Gallup poll that you're talking about, the Republican Party numbers are up as well. So you have an angry base with a more popular president now than he was before impeachment. That's bad news for Democrats. And by the way, they're still counting votes in Iowa, and it's delivered on horseback. So who knows what's going on over there?
I think he teed you up. Yeah.
Well, and just one more thing about the poll, 63% of Americans, not just Republicans, 63% of Americans approve of the way he's handling the economy. That is huge because Americans don't tend to kick presidents out of office when they're happy with their pocketbook.
Yeah. Well, let's talk about Iowa. We are still watching the results come in 24 hours later. What is it there? And there are a lot of headlines that are kind of starting to emerge. One of them, Joe Biden coming in maybe 4th place. Jennifer, what do you make of this?
Well, first of all, Democrats have shot themselves in the foot because no matter who comes out of the gate, 1st, 2nd, and 3rd, it's lost. I mean, we've already moved on to the State of the Union. The candidates have moved on to New Hampshire. So the whole point of Iowa, I mean, Iowa, you only had, what, 170,000 estimated caucus goers out of a state that has about 3 million people. So you already have a small number of people deciding who the first horse out of the gate is, right? Well, that's all been stomped on because, again, 24 hours after the caucuses opened, we still don't know who the winner is. So they have just killed the momentum for these candidates, and it's really a shame.
The votes are still coming in. What do you make of the fact that Buttigieg, as of right now, is in the lead?
Oh, it's impressive. And we've talked about this. I think he's the best candidate out there. He's got some issues as it relates to the African-American vote, and he'll have some work to do. But he's really good. I mean, he's kind of like the Better Angels Obama type candidate of 2020. So he's good, and Bernie's going to be right there. But remember, after Iowa, and you're right, Jennifer, you know, they've moved on to New Hampshire. But Iowa's probably going to be somewhat of a split delegate situation, but especially with Bernie and Buttigieg and Biden. I tell you what, it's just been one stumble after the other. It's just like he just can't get out of the starting gate. He really couldn't.
With Sanders, you know, Iowa was really, this was his race to lose. It seemed like he had all of the momentum going into Iowa. David, do you think his supporters tonight are feeling robbed?
Well, possibly a little bit. But look, you know, he's going to finish really well in Iowa. And remember, he's got, I think, a 15-point lead in New Hampshire. So I think that's really important, too. So, look, he could win 1-2 in Iowa, New Hampshire, and he's going to do well in Nevada as well. So, you know, I think he's in a good position.
Jennifer, closing thoughts on Joe Biden. Is there any way that he can make up for this deficit? You know, he was the winnable candidate. Right. Jennifer, actually hold that thought. I'm being told that we have to rest. We'll have to hear more tonight.
Save it for another day.
It's right. On the web.
David and Jennifer, thank you.
Thank you.
To have sex before you marry is a bad idea.
Don't tell me there's no such thing as gun violence.
That just depends on your definition of when life begins.
Watch Dan and Dale tackle trending topics that test your faith on the next Faithwire, Monday night at 9:30. The Global Lane takes you around the world, providing facts over fiction.
What might rising trade and geopolitical tensions mean for you on the home front?
With over 45 years of experience, award-winning journalist Gary Lane brings you the truth from a global angle.
What about the issue of immigration?
World news analysis you won't see anywhere else.
And it's all right here on the Global Lane.
Watch The Global Lane, Thursday night at 9:30.
Well, tonight, coronavirus cases continue to skyrocket as China moves to using drones in helping fight the epidemic.
This as we get a gruesome look inside a hospital in the hardest hit area. CBN News national security correspondent Eric Phillips joins us now with the latest on the outbreak. Eric?
John and Jenna, once again, in the last 24 hours, coronavirus cases have jumped by the thousands, reaching more than 20,000 today, the vast majority of those in China. Plus, the death toll is growing as well. A Wuhan resident recorded this video at a hospital in the epicenter of the coronavirus. Overcrowded conditions, And the man with the camera talks about seeing bodies around him, allegedly victims of the coronavirus, although his claims have not been independently confirmed. Meanwhile, drones with speakers are flying over parts of China to spray disinfectant and warn residents to stay home to prevent spread of the disease. Hong Kong is now reporting its first coronavirus-related death as striking medical workers demand officials to close the border with the mainland to prevent spread of the disease, something Chief Executive Carrie Lam has refused to do.
I certainly would not agree with the allegation that we are sort of not addressing this public health concern adequately. And certainly I don't agree with the allegation that we are putting politics above public health. This is a public health situation.
In the U.S., cases are holding steady, barely in the double digits, helped by precautions like Princeton University calling on students, staff, and faculty who had recently been to China to self-isolate.
We know that the level of risk for any individual person to be infected is really quite low. And so we're just moving out of an abundance of caution.
WHO warned Monday that the world is not prepared for a pandemic. Today, officials clarified that we are not currently in a pandemic, rather an epidemic with multiple focal points, perhaps a significant medical distinction, but one that should not necessarily make us feel more comfortable. We'll be right back. You're watching Faith Nation.
It's the new Superbook Bible app. It's packed with games, activities, and Superbook episodes that you can watch for free. Oh, no! There's trivia, a fun daily devotional, and answers to your Bible questions. Plus, an easy-to-understand Bible the whole family will enjoy. You can even create your own Superbook character. Ta-da! It's the new Superbook Bible app. Free downloads on iTunes, Google Play, and Amazon.
From Washington, D.C., uncompromising stories, interviews, and analysis from veteran journalists David Brody.
Escalating fight.
Jenna Browder.
Chose his words carefully.
Ben Kennedy.
Plan to join him.
And Amber Strong.
Or impeachment grows a little bit louder.
Bringing you the political news that matters.
We get out and tell the story of the progress that we're making in this country.
Watch Faith Nation, weeknights at 6 on the CBN News Channel.
We will move the American embassy to the eternal capital of the Jewish people, Jerusalem.
As the nations rage, you can stand with Israel.
History is being written, and I want to be a part of it.
Call 1-800-700-7000 and get to life.
This is our nature as a country.
Discover the untold story of how Israeli volunteers are changing the world.
We consider it our duty to reach out and help others around the world.
For a gift of $10 or more, you can own the acclaimed CBN documentary To Life.
To treat a human, no matter what he is, which religious he has, which color he is. This is what I'm doing.
Support Israel in their time of need. Get to Life, now available on DVD. Call 1-800-700-7000 or log on to cbn.com.
And I wish that other people throughout the world could see this side of Israel.
Well, finally tonight, we're just a couple of hours away from the president's National State of the Union address tonight.
And President Trump preparing to take the floor in Congress amid an impeachment trial in the Senate. Our coverage and analysis begins at 8:30 p.m. Eastern right here on the CBN News Channel, or you can stream it live on cbnnews.com or the CBN News app on your phone or device.
Well, thank you for watching Faith Nation tonight.
Have a great evening. We'll see you right back here at 8:30.